Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe. Today we're going to talk about something that most people pass by or experience during their work life, which is starting a new job, and not just starting any job, but actually starting a C-level position, in this case, a chief marketing officer job. And luckily, Frida here has said yes to share a bit of her thoughts about what is it that you need to consider before starting a new job. How do you pick your new employer? How do you align with the new management and so forth? And I think you are the most recent award winner as well, Frida, that we have had joining our our live. So you won the sassiest woman of 2024, right?
Yeah.
This year. So I'm really pleased that you've said yes to talk a bit today about everything you've considered about switching jobs and what you've done the first 6 months in your new job. But Frida, before we get into all my questions, maybe you can just, for those who haven't heard about the sassiest woman of 24, like who are you and what's your background? And like lastly, what is Rillion as well, where you've just started?
Yeah, sure. I only won one award in my life, and that was that was the Sassiest Woman Award 2024. So it's very close to my heart.
It's still award winning.
Award winning. Yeah, it actually stands here in the Rillion office on a shelf, so everybody can see it. So I get reminded every day that I actually won that. But my name is Frida Ahrenby, and as you said, I'm a CMO. I'm a CMO at a company called Rillion. And Rillion is a company that does AP automation, so accounts payable automation or invoice management in automation. So we work within the fintech industry. Our buyer is typically the CFO or the financial department at any company. And I've been here since March. So just as this show tells, I'm 6 months in. And before joining Rillion, I was part of another scale-up journey at a company called GetAccept, who does a digital sales room platform or offers a digital sales room platform. And I was part of that journey for 4.5 years. So more or less scaling that company from 60 to 200 employees or something like that, and building up the marketing team at GetAccept, and more or less doing the same I have the same assignment here at Rillion. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm from Stockholm. I live in Stockholm, but I've been around the world living in some other countries as well. And I have a long background within sales. So I think we're going to touch upon that, but I am very sales oriented, and that's how I usually approach my marketing roles.
Very nice. Thank you so much for that intro, Frida. I guess one of my first questions was kind of like, why did you find the timing to be right for you to go looking for a new job? I know I've been following GetAccept, and it looks like a great company, and the things I've seen from you looked absolutely great as well.
Yeah.
What were the kind of are we talking gut feeling or a rational decision, or what were the considerations for your timing changing jobs? And of course, if there's some parts of it you don't want to share, that's totally okay.
No, but I think, that was definitely one of the toughest decisions that I had to make. I love GetAccept. I still keep in close contact with, the founders that are close friends of mine, and I follow the company closely. So it wasn't necessarily an easy choice, but I also, when I joined in 2019, GetAccept had just taken in their A series of funding, and up until then the company had been growing really clearly with an outbound sales motion. And during that investment round, it was pretty clear that they needed some kind of other motion to complement the sales motion that they already had in place. And because of that, they decided to bring in a VP marketing at that time to scale the marketing team and to scale the demand gen machinery and the global brand and everything. And I was brought in to do that. So when I joined GetAccept, I think we were 3 people working in the marketing team, and it was very organic. It was very, they did a lot of good stuff, but it wasn't necessarily very structured, and it wasn't necessarily very scalable. So I was brought in to build a marketing team, and I did so during those 4.5 years, from 3 to I think we were 30 at a maximum. And then during recession, I took it down slightly, obviously because that was needed. But also we scaled from, I think when I started, we had an inbound ARR generation at 15% of all new ARR coming in, and we built that up to 65%.
Oh, nice.
So it was an amazing journey, but I also felt I was coming to, 4 years, and I felt like maybe I've, done the things that I came here to do, and maybe I'm actually, you start thinking like, maybe I'm done now. Maybe I can actually hand over this to somebody else who can grow it further, and I can actually look for a new challenge where I get to, I'm a builder, I would say, at heart. So I really like to build up stuff from scratch. I think for the timing was just right for me to sort of hand over, like no negative feelings at all. It was just time. And I had the discussion with my CEO, and no hard feelings at all. And it just felt natural to leave and move forward and find the next journey for myself. I think it also comes down to when you're used to building teams and you develop people and leaders, and you work a lot with leadership, sooner or later you have to also think about what you yourself need to continue developing and continue to stay motivated and inspired. And I also came to that I need something more, where I sort of step out further outside my comfort zone and sort of put on that big jacket again, and almost feel a little bit out of it to get challenged again.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think I feel a little bit the same thing about building stuff, that it's like putting one brick after the other on top of each other. That's the really fun part. And if you get to a feeling that you've contributed with what you can, maybe it's time to find the next Lego block somewhere.
Yeah, and I also felt I had this amazing, it's an amazing team at Get Accept, the marketing team. And I felt like I had this team and we were doing so many great things, but it almost felt like I can just step away now because things just happen anyways. I don't necessarily need to be here because the team is taking care of everything. And then I also think you have to sort of be true to yourself and say, okay, well, then let's go.
I can guess that there's probably almost the best state to get at, or like when you've completed the race, that's when the team knows what to do and they can manage without you.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you've seen a bit of everything inside of marketing. When you, as then like an experienced CMO, what were kind of the things you had on your list to kind of, I think probably one of the most important things we do in at least in our professional life is if you can pick the right employers, then the chances of you succeeding are much higher than if you pick the wrong employers. So what were the things that you were looking for as you kind of went through decision on making on where to invest your time at the next place?
Good question. I think the number one thing for me is the building part. So where can I find a company where I get to build, not necessarily from a startup phase, but still having room to, making a clear impact and build something from the bottoms and up. To me, that's super exciting, I think. Yeah. And then that comes to building a team, building leadership, building culture, building everything within the marketing domain. It doesn't necessarily have to be building everything, because obviously that can be a lot, but there has to be several ingredients where I get to build from start, so to speak, and see that grow and become something great within X amount of time. So I was looking for a company that had that ingredients. I was looking for a company that had a clear expansion, international focus. And I was looking for a company that was clear on marketing as a growth motion equals sales and marketing being the same, or sitting in each other's laps, or the same boat at least. So I felt that understanding needed to be in place, because I've been at so many companies before where you have to struggle so much to even get to that before you can start doing the real work. And I didn't want to do that again.
That's pretty good advice.
I can add one thing that I also looked for. I didn't necessarily want to go to, because there's so many great SaaS companies out there, and I didn't necessarily want to go to an obvious choice, like a super well-known brand or company, I'm triggered by the underdog challenges or companies. Like people go like, oh, I don't know, Rillion, I've never heard about that. And then I
Yeah,
get,
me
well,
neither.
give me some time and we'll see,
Yeah.
you say in 2 years time or 3 years time, because I think that's super exciting too, because then you can really see if you make any impact.
Yeah. Is it is it a competitive industry, or is it kind of not that competitive? I know Get Accept, for example, is in a very competitive space, but I don't know how it is with Rillion.
It's competitive, but I would say the difference, I mean, if we should compare, but the difference here is that our solution is a must-have solution. Like every company would have some kind of AP automation solution. So the market in Europe, for example, is a replacement market because we are so,
Okay. Yeah.
these kind of solutions have been around since the 90s. So every company would have some kind of solution, and we more have to build top of mind and brand awareness. So when you actually replace whatever solution you have, we are there and we might be the choice. But if you look at US, for example, it's a white space market because it's a first buyer market. They don't necessarily, in so many industries in the US, they do not have automated accounts payable solutions. They still pay with checks. They have manual processes. They have huge finance departments that stamps on manual paper invoices. So it's like this huge potential there to come in. It's not necessarily that they don't understand that they want to go digital or automate their processes, but it's obviously a big obstacle to take that leap and to make that switch. So we have to go convince them to do it now and do it with us. But then to answer your question about competitors, it is a competitive market, and especially US that we're betting big on. There's huge players with, huge finance in their back. So once again, we're going to be the underdogs coming towards these big giants, but then we have to do it smarter and differently and more creatively, and that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when, like, normally you talk about as US being the more tech savvy than the Europeans, but it doesn't seem like in in this industry.
And that's so interesting because they are in 8 cases out of 10, but then there are these other parts that are not at all digitalized or transformed or automated. Or
did the management brief you on this upfront, or is this kind of something you've kind of sensed as you've started to get into things at Rillion?
No, that I would say that was part of my recruitment process. Like I got a clear understanding of the case, what was, the 3-year plan, what was expected from the management as a whole and the company where we were going, but then also what I needed to come in and actually deliver upon.
Yeah, very cool. So what did you start the first day with a very granular 100-day plan, or did you come with like just a blank sheet, or what was you're a very smart woman, obviously. So what were you kind of your ideas about, like, what's the first day, first month gonna be like? What were your plan? How would you secure yourself being successful when starting out?
Yeah, I don't know if I will be yet, but let's hope, fingers
Yeah.
crossed. But I was part of the budget process, like on the side from the outside before I started, so I could influence that process already before I started. And I think for me, the most important then was to secure the team, because Rillion didn't have a marketing team when I joined. They had a consultant team in place.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you had like a blank sheet. That's really
So
building.
marketing team, prio number 1.
Yeah.
I need some colleagues to work with.
Yeah.
So that was my first. I was lucky to be able to draw up the whole marketing team, present it to the board, present it to the management team, and then secure budget for that before I even started. And then also secure, marketing acquisition budget for whatever, for 2024, based on what I back then thought that we needed to do. Then obviously that has changed now.
Yeah.
But I did secure enough means to be able to reallocate and actually work what we have. But I think that was fundamental to, and I'm not saying that you should start before you actually start, because sometimes you can't do that and sometimes you shouldn't do that, obviously. But it's still good to have some kind of idea of what you want to do. And if it's critical before you start, if processes are going on, like budget process or anything like that, you still need to have some kind of foot into the door so you don't miss your chances to secure, if it's funds or resources or what it might be.
I think, yeah, you've already touched two things that is important then when you're a marketer changing jobs. One thing is have the management's word that marketing is important. And then secondly, that they actually also back it up with budget that shows that they are bidding on this functionality. What do you consider the biggest challenges for a CMO these days? Maybe let's start with the latter one here. How do you work with your executive team to get the most out of the marketing function? So you've already talked a bit about alignment, but what else do you do together with the executive team to get them to trust in the marketing process?
That's fundamental. I mean, I think you have to be very clear on, I mean, it starts with the target. So being extremely clear on aligning the marketing targets to the overall company targets, I would say that's number one. If you, either that comes as a request from your CEO, or if it doesn't, you need to yourself team up with the CFO and the CEO to make sure that you set joint targets. Otherwise, marketing is always going to be something happening here that nobody really understands why or how, even though you might sit on the management team. But I think those targets are super important to get into place. Either you need to drive it yourself, or if it's a marketing oriented management team, that will come as a request from the CEO and the CFO, I would say.
What is a target, just for like, if you were to put a few more words to it?
And as an example, Rillion, as an example, has obviously ARR growth as a company target, but then we also have new logo acquisition as a company target. And then I take that and break that down into, okay, what does marketing do to drive new logo acquisition, for example? And I set the same target on my team as we have on a company level, as an example. So aligning the KPIs you have on a company level with your marketing targets, so that it connects the whole way. Then obviously the further down you get in the marketing team and towards individual KPIs, those are going to be more detailed. But as a whole, the marketing team needs to see the connection between the company targets and the marketing target.
For any marketer, it's really about being very proactive about making space for yourself in the company. Like, if you had to start from scratch without a marketing team, I bet you probably have also been speaking to the sales leaders about what is it that we do in marketing? Like, who is it that you want us to attract? Like, who do you like to have demos with, and so forth? The same for the CFO. If the CFO hasn't been used to that cost in his budget, why is it that we need this cost? So sometimes people understand marketing, sometimes they don't. But if they don't understand it, you have to be proactive, and you have to be the one that explains why we're doing X, Y, Z things.
Yeah, and if you don't do that, you're always going to end. The risk is that you always end up being a deliver organization. So you get requests, you deliver, you get requests, and you deliver. But you have to sort of switch that balance, so you're in the driver's seat, and instead say, we're going to do this and this and this because, and the rest of the organization will most likely be super grateful because you present something that they can relate to. But otherwise, if you don't do that, you're always going to be sort of behind and just deliver on everybody else's requests.
There's two directions I want us to go in. One is kind of this kind of sales and marketing collaboration. But before we head there, so now you had the chance to basically construct your own team from scratch again. And I'm curious to hear, you don't have to mention their names, but like, what were the kind of roles or functionalities that you wanted to have in place now that you started with a fresh plate?
Yeah, I am building a slightly smaller team this time. So we're going to be 11, including me when I'm done, and I'm soon done. I'm not looking to build any sub teams this time. So just one team, everybody reporting to me, everybody peers. We're working as one team together based on the strategy that we've set together. And I want to avoid, we're going to need to be so flexible and agile and run fast. I want to avoid any silos. I want to avoid any middle layers, as long as it's possible, at least. But also because I also like myself to be in the grits, and that's easier to do when I don't have a lot of smaller teams to manage.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So what I pinpointed was content and SEO, super important. We are fairly good at that already, which I'm super grateful for. But going into a new market, we definitely need to be strong there. So that was one of the first hires that I did. I also brought in a marketing ops person and a performance marketeer quite quickly. And then the next person was a product marketeer. And then the next person was a web and CRO, conversion rate person, who will take care of our most important channel. And then a HubSpot wizard, so a life cycle marketing person. And then a designer or art director. So I really found experts on each area that can help me drive what we need to drive. And the next, I'm actually looking to hire a head of demand gen as well, who's going to sort of take coordinating role for the specialists that are focusing on demand gen.
Yeah, it's interesting. All of them are kind of specialists in each of their own field.
Yeah, but they will also, when you have your domain expertise in that sense, it's also easy to, or more easy, I hope, to avoid any toe stepping, but also the fact that we can easily create smaller teams whenever we need to. Like we have this project now, okay, then we take you and you and you and you, and you run this. And now we might have this focus, okay, then you and you and you take that project and run with it. Back again to not being part of teams so that we create any boundaries or limitations in that way, but everybody works together depending on what we have.
That's very interesting. I think I put up a post some time back about how often to have team meetings, and is it like daily syncs? Is it a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, quarterly meeting? How do you make sure that all these different kinds of specialists are all somewhat running in the same direction or understanding what each of them are doing?
We run weekly, like Monday morning, or it's not actually morning now, it's afternoon because we have a person in US as well. Monday weekly, where we go through, last week's achievements and performance, and then we look 1 to 2 weeks ahead. And that is a more general meeting. And then after that meeting, we divide into smaller groups. So for example, all the creators, content and designers, they might have a separate session right after so that they can work more in sprint motions or with a sprint approach, looking at, okay, what do we have actually on our Monday board that we have to deliver upon? Whereas the demand gen team forms a smaller group and more in detail go into whatever activities they are working on the coming 1 to 2 weeks.
Super nice that you're sharing these things, Frida, because right now we do monthly meetings where everybody presents what did we do the last weeks and what are we doing the next week. And then I do weekly one-on-ones with everybody. So the more kind of within your specialty, what are we doing this week? But I've been thinking about whether we should have that kind of a weekly meeting as well. Do you have like then quarterly targets or OKRs or something that the weekly meeting connects to or something like that?
Yeah, we have monthly targets on ARR and deals creation and pipeline and so forth that we look at every week. So I gather for that Monday meeting, I gather the data and we look at, okay, how are we trending towards our monthly target? And then we discuss based on that, do we need to do any extra actions on this, or are we good depending on how we're trending towards the target and so forth. And then we go through more per area what we're working on, and we might do joint prioritizations in that meeting as well. And then we more deep dive into the action-based details.
What are the 1 to 3 kind of most important metrics that you're kind of following or have committed to the rest of the management team that you are to deliver on?
ARR. Yeah. ARR. No, but not to joke around that. That's the only thing that goes on in my brain. But then obviously I break that down to how much pipeline are we generating inbound wise, and what's necessary to be able to build this pipeline, how many book meetings do we need, and how many high intent MQLs do we need to generate. But those are more or less the four main targets that we look at on a weekly basis. And then obviously each person has more individual KPIs, whether it's social media metrics or web metrics or whatever it might be. But those are the ones we're steering towards together.
Do they then in the Monday meeting then report on their own, whether it's social metrics, or do everyone have a number? I guess is my question.
No, not in the weekly meeting. Then we just look at the joint marketing team targets. But then in one-on-ones, we follow each person's KPIs. And then also, we haven't gotten to that yet, but we will have a monthly and or quarterly like business review. I haven't decided if we're going to run it monthly or quarterly yet. But then we'll deep dive more into each person's area and the KPIs, how we're trending there.
Before we head to sales, I'll just take this question from Julia here. What are your must-have tools as a CMO to handle all your tasks? I think like listening to all the things you've been up to the last 6 months, there's a million tasks on your plate. And I know the stress myself, because like one day you're doing budgets, next week you're planning physical events, next week you're looking at Google Ads and so forth. So what's your trick to juggling all the tasks that you have to have on your plate?
I'm bad at this. I don't know if this is a good answer or a bad answer. I have most of the structure in my head, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
Every now and then I try to, put it in Trello or on a Monday board or something like that, but it always ends up sort of messy, and I go back to just keeping it up here.
Yeah.
That's not always a good thing, because I've learned that I need to also take the stuff out here and sort of align with my colleagues and my team members. No, but I use notes, and I use monday.com and Excel, I would say, are my go-to tools.
Yeah. I tend to kind of also run too much in my brain as well, because I feel also like when I sit down and structure all the things, then I forget to do it a week or 2 weeks, and then suddenly it's way too old what exists in there, and and then some potential just popped up, and you have to go chase this as well.
I add a page in my notes app every time, and I always name it to do. And then I have like 10 to do sections. And I'm like, well, which one is the latest? Like, what to do? So I have my phone now.
That's funny. Do you do anything to create clarity inside of your head, or do you have kind of some kind of vision that you can continuously then go seek out, or is there any process to kind of how to keep structured inside your head?
Oh, that's a question I haven't thought about.
Maybe it's bucketed around the different kind of employees that you have like a kind of a mental note for what's next.
I think that it's almost like I have like a screenshot of something I've written down, and then I go through it in my head. Like, okay, now I've done that, next task, and then I might jump to another stream, and I see something different that I need to remember.
I'm quite similar.
I don't know if I recommend it though, but
it's problematic also sometimes when you need to lay out, when you have stakeholders that want to see 6 or 12 months plans, because for me, like sometimes week on week, things change, or we get an opportunity and we have to jump on that. So that long, big strategy you made is kind of doesn't matter, because there's a better opportunity over here.
I think for the bigger, it's one thing how you have your sort of task management. That's usually individual, and everybody works in different ways. And we just have to, respect that people do it differently, as long as the job gets done. But then obviously you have the bigger things like, okay, we need a marketing strategy. Obviously that's not only in my head. We have a proper strategy in a deck, and whatever else is important to align and anchor with a lot of other people. But if the question from Julia was, how do you keep your task management, then I don't know if I have the best recipe for it.
No, but clearly it's proven to work in the past, at least.
Yeah.
If we change lane a little bit and talk about the role of sales for you as a B2B marketer, and like now you've been in this situation, stepping in obviously at GetAccept, you probably had a really well-run machine, and you know exactly how to deliver leads to sales and so forth. What have you experienced now having to start over, and perhaps even in a company that didn't have a marketing function before? What have kind of been your kind of route so far to align with sales, as everybody talk about?
I would say Rillion obviously Rillion has been running sales for several years and it's been going fine.
Yeah.
But we didn't necessarily have a clear structure in place, either how marketing and sales collaborate together, but also in terms of the sales process as a start. We implemented HubSpot at the end of last year, which has been really good for us, because also since we are present in several different markets, we are also the result of several mergers and acquisitions. So there's been many different systems and applications and tools that people have been using, and that has been sort of working, but it hasn't necessarily been structured and scalable and clear
No.
for everybody. So when we implemented HubSpot last year, we've more or less taken, once again, we built everything from scratch. And I was part of that even before I started as well, so that I could make sure how I wanted, the marketing process to be set up in HubSpot and how I wanted that connected to sales. And then from my perspective, what I was used to in terms of the sales process. So a lot of that was already set up when I started, but then one of the most important roles that I then hired was the lifecycle marketing person, who is a HubSpot expert. And he obviously works extremely close to sales, optimizing these processes all the time. So what we've done now during the whole spring is that we've optimized the way we look at pipeline from a sales and marketing perspective. We've optimized what we're tagging and tracking, the handover from marketing to sales. It differs slightly in Europe versus US. Okay.
Oh, okay.
What does that mean in terms of scoring? What does it mean in terms of lead nurturing and so forth? So that's one thing. The other thing is that one of my, what's always top of my agenda is to become best friends with the sales managers and the sales directors, because I want to know what they do. I want to know what deals they're working on. I want to understand how the customer calls and prospect calls are working. So that's definitely something that I do within just weeks from starting to make sure that I understand the sales organization, who's in charge of what, and then, meet with them to also understand, how do they look upon marketing? How can I help? How can we, create this perfect relationship where you get what you need and I get what I need?
What deal size is it approximately that Rillion sells at?
We have two. So we target both the SMB segment, mostly in Sweden, and then we target the mid-market segment in all the other markets that we're present in. So average deal size in the SMB segment would be in Swedish kroner, it would be like 40K.
Quick translation is that's like $5,000-$6,000 a year or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And the ACV towards the mid-market segment is rather $25K or $35K. So much bigger.
Yeah.
10 times bigger.
Very interesting. There's also a lot of things we can talk about there about having two different products and kind of the things you can afford to do with the mid-market is very different from what you can afford to do selling to the SMB market.
Exactly. Very big. That's a big question.
And there's probably some, at least I could imagine that you're going to do some account-based marketing at some point for the larger accounts versus you can't send handwritten notes to all the small companies that are signing up to the platform.
No, we need to find more cost. And up until now, everything has been treated the same way, more or less. And we need to, maybe not this year, but next year, definitely. Just at ABM, ABS, and then understand how we can become even more cost efficient towards the SMB segment.
Yeah. Do you have is there like a clearly defined ideal customer profile that you've been handed, or are you still kind of working on it?
Yeah, also something that wasn't in place when I joined. So we did a huge ICP / persona project actually immediately when I started. So we have now defined it clearly for US, and we're working now on Europe to clarify it for Europe as well. But it differs a little bit on the markets in Europe, so it's not necessarily the same in all countries. So we're 75% done or something like that. And then the next step is also to really clearly define our buyer personas, because we don't have that either.
Yeah, I think that is a really good way to start as a new CMO, like, because then all the other choices become a lot easier once you have finished that process. That okay,
and you learn so much from that process, like all the research you do, all the competitor analysis that you do, just reading up on the competitors and what they do, watching their webinars, whatever it might be. You are sort of, obviously you would do that when you start a new job, but now you're really forced into it. You really spend time on doing it.
Do you have any like advice on this ideal customer profile definition? Because I personally know that it can be a little bit painful stepping into this process where you have to start saying no, we're not going to sell to these, we're not going to sell to these. Any practical advice for people who have to start this process?
I think that's the end goal. That's exactly what you need to do. Like, you have to land in a situation where you actually know that, okay, this is what we're going after, and even though it hurts, we're going to say no to this. And if you have that, and you have that anchored in the organization, it's so much easier to run, both for sales, for marketing, but also for product, because otherwise product is going to develop things that somebody screams about because a lead came in that wasn't within the ICP, and all of a sudden you're developing a new feature that's not necessarily the right one at all. So I think you have to take a very structured approach to the ICP. You have to look at your existing customer base. You have to understand where the value segments are. You have to understand what the market look like that you're going into or that you are in, and what your value proposition is, and your USPs, and what the competitors are doing, and also what kind of leads are coming in, and how do we close those leads, and to what length of the sales cycle, what's the ACV. All of this data has to be gathered so that you can find the patterns that then turns into your ICP. So it's both like internal work, external work, mapping it all together so that you get this ICP map in that sense.
Yeah, I only supported that. It's painful work because it doesn't give you immediate result, but all the other decisions you're gonna make about your go-to-market becomes a lot easier once it is done.
Yeah, we've spent 4 months or something like that on this, and we've done 15 to 20 deep customer interviews. We are sending out surveys to 300 to 400 external companies and gathering data. We're looking at the existing customer base and all the won deals since X months back. And we're looking at the competitors. We're doing analysis both on, what product do they have? What are their value prop? Me and my team have done a sort of digital performance analysis on all the competitors to understand where are they, what are they saying, what channels are they using, how do they do campaigns, branding, messaging, positioning, all of that, so that we can get a fuller picture on, okay, where does Rillion fit in all of this? And is there any gap that we can fill? But once you have that, it's so much easier to actually work with your branding and positioning and also your product market fit, because you realize maybe you have to develop more features to actually appeal to this vertical or whatever it might be.
I think one very low practical thing that helped us getting started was to work with this antithesis to an ideal customer profile. So at least you can start by saying, okay, it's definitely not these guys, and it's not these guys. Yeah. Because then you start to narrow down a little bit, that you get closer at least to, okay, who is it then?
Yeah, and I also think, especially for us, when we're going into a big market where we know there are big players that we're going to compete towards, and we might not have, as big of funds as they do. Yeah. We really need to narrow it down. Okay, where can we be strong and where can we attack better? Because they might not be there, or they might not focus on this as much as we will do. And that's our chance of winning.
I think this competitor conversation is also Very interesting. That I think there's this fine balance of knowing what are the competition doing and then also going your own way, because you don't become a leader by just following what everybody else is doing. So it's funny process where you need to know the market, but you also need to kind of develop your own path forward. What is kind of your general thinking about the, like both in Get Accept and at Rillion and so forth in your past? What is your thinking around competition?
I think you should know your competition, but you shouldn't necessarily focus too much on what they're doing. Like, I'm a strong believer in what you just said. If you can believe strongly in what yourself and what you're doing at your company, and you do your best to develop your product based on that, your sales machinery based on that, and your marketing approach based on that, I think the less you can worry or look at competitors and compare and be worried and be stressed and, try to copy, the better, and just focus on you, believe in what you're doing, you have your strategy, you have your plan, go do that, than worrying so much about competitors.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be there anyway. I mean, in baseline, you should obviously know what they're doing and you should find your sweet spot. But then when you're on the go, I think it only slows you down if you worry too much and look too much on what the competitors are doing.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to be disciplined as well, because sometimes if you start following the competitors all this time, you're just running around chasing what they're doing rather than finding your own path, as you say.
Yeah.
Cool. First, I want to look backwards and ask what did surprise you, and then we can go probably what's coming up for the next 6 months. But what has kind of surprised you since you started at Rillion, being that for Rillion in general, or for the marketing department, or just part of your work that you did not expect to find?
What has surprised me? I was aware of that this was a builder's case, but I didn't necessarily expect. I thought that more bricks were going to be in place, which is fine that they aren't, but it still surprised me the first weeks when I joined, that I sort of looked into something and then I realized, oh wow, this is not done. Okay, then I looked in here, like, wow, this is not done either. And then I looked here and I'm like, holy cow, now I have to fix this too. And I just had to sort of reset my mind over and over again the first weeks, when I realized that, okay, this and this and this and this I anticipated, but then I also have this and this and this.
Yeah.
Okay, everything can be done, but it's then back to time being a scarce resource. People, back again to, I didn't have a team. Okay, people need to get in, so I have people to work with who can help me with this, and that takes time. And then obviously having an understanding from the rest of the organization and owners that this is actually the situation, or this is what it looks like, and we have a plan, but we also need to be realistic in terms of how long it takes to get everything up and running.
Do you have any kind of rational scoring of all projects or all ideas? So when this also you have to fix, how do you have like a spreadsheet where you score them on cost and how easy they are to do and your gut feeling, or how do you kind of organize what comes first?
Yeah, I actually used a super good template it's a diagnostic scorecard. So when I can share it later. When I came in, I sort of did an audit on the whole marketing domain. So all the areas within marketing that I believe needed to have an audit, whether it was product marketing, demand gen, customer marketing, content, website, I listed in each area what I thought was needed to be there for us to run a optimal marketing team and marketing approach. And then I sort of scored it like, okay, 0 doesn't exist, 1 something exists, 2 everything's good. So that was the first thing that I did. So I got sort of a baseline audit on, okay, demand gen is 30% there, website is 45% there, the brand and positioning, okay, 70% there. And based on that, I could then prioritize, both based on that, but also depending on the targets that we set. What is critical to get up and running? Okay, it's more critical to get the website working than have now I'm just making something up, that have a product marketing framework in place. Okay, let's prioritize that.
Yeah, super nice. I think hopefully that's one of the things people learn as they get more experience, to become good at picking the right projects, because there's never too few projects. There's always endless projects that you can pick from. So the
And
magic
maybe
is
go on
picking the most important ones first.
exactly. And then
Okay.
back again to anchor and make sure that whoever stakeholder you're reporting to see the same thing, because otherwise also I think marketing, there's always a risk that marketing does a lot of things, but if you haven't told anyone what you're doing or why you're prioritizing the way you're doing, you're always going to have the comment like, we don't know what marketing's doing, or marketing is not doing anything, because and I think that's your responsibility to make that visible, so that people that really really understand.
Yeah, 100%. Like your SEO project it's gonna take 6 months before you see a lot of leads coming through. So if people upstairs don't respect that you need to produce the content and it needs to rank, and then it's gonna bring us leads, and then they're gonna be impatient.
Exactly. And I would say people that don't work in marketing, now it might sound harsh, but what most people see are like the webinars or the in-person events or something funny on social media, because that's easy to grasp for people outside marketing. They can actually see it, they can feel it, they can touch it. But if you don't do many of those things because you're working in the background to just get the foundation in place, or with an SEO project, as you say,
Yeah.
easy for people to assume that nothing is happening, although they might not mean anything by that. But so you have to show and tell, even though you're working with the background things.
Very nice. And then to kind of come full circle as the last bit, for the next 6 months, what are the next priorities for your marketing department then? Or is it just continuing the same path, or is something new popping in? Or what are your, like, the overall thinking about what's coming up now?
I will say, I mean, within 2 to 3 weeks, I'm full team. So I'm done recruiting and I have everybody starting, which is fantastic. So we will put a lot of focus, obviously, into bonding the team, getting everybody to know each other. I think that's super important, that when you work like this, you have to really trust your closest colleagues and you have to feel that you belong to a team. So we're going to put a lot of investment into that. But then it's definitely focusing on Rillion as a brand, positioning us, strengthen our brand, primarily in the US. We have a lot to do there. And then I would say demand gen. We have to get a structured, scalable demand gen machine up and running, also specifically for the US. And it's a new market. We have so much to learn. So we have to understand, where are our ICP, where are our personas, how do we reach them, what channels, what touch points, and really understand their customer journey so that we can pinpoint activities throughout and make sure that we become more known towards these buyers.
Very nice. Perhaps we can do an round 2, 6 months again from now.
Yeah, let's.
If people are to help you out with that ARR, what type of leads is it that they should, or like, what does a good Rillion customer or an ideal Rillion customer look like?
In the Nordics, it would be a company with up to 200 employees, a company that has 5 to 10,000 invoices yearly.
Okay.
Who has an ERP like Visma or Fort Knox, and wants to boost their AP automation. Yeah, and then we want to talk to the CFO or the controller or the finance manager.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you sit in a company like this, then make sure to reach out to Frida. All right,
nice.
Frida, it's been so wonderful to speak with you, and there's many more topics that we can go into when we do the round 2. But I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Go reach out to Frida if you have any leads that fits her, and then just follow her on LinkedIn, because she posts plenty of great material.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.